Hey guys, it's Betty from BakerBettie.com and welcome to day 4 of getting your sourdough starter going. Now hopefully if you're watching this video, you have been following along the series. You have done day 1, 2, and 3 of getting your sourdough starter going. But if you are new here, there is a link in the description for this playlist so you can get caught up to us. Now I was really excited when I looked at my starter today because I can see that there are bigger bubbles in it and it has about doubled in size, so this is a really good sign. It is getting stronger and more active, and if you still don't see this activity, trust the process, keep going forward. I promise it's going to get started. So today we are going to do a little bit of a different feeding than we did the past 2 days. The past 2 days, we kept 25 grams of starter and fed it 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. Now this is called a 1-2-2 feeding, meaning 1 part starter to 2 parts flour and 2 parts water. Now what we're going to do today is what is called a 1-3-3 feeding. So we're going to keep 1 part starter and add 3 parts flour and 3 parts water, which means we're going to keep 25 grams of starter and add 75 grams of flour and 75 grams of water. So we're still keeping that same ratio of the same amount of flour and water, but we're changing the ratio slightly of how much starter we're keeping compared to how much we are adding to it. So I'm going to go ahead and discard all but 25 grams of my old starter, and then I'm going to go ahead and add fresh flour and fresh water, again warmed up just slightly with our water. And the reason we are changing this ratio just slightly is because our starter is getting more active and we want to give it a little bit more food so that when we go to feed it in 24 hours, it hopefully will have had enough food over that 24 hours that it's not getting too hungry by the time we go to feed it. Okay, I'm going to tare my scale and add the 75 grams of whole wheat flour and then 75 grams of my water. Okay, and just like every other day, we're going to stir that up really well. Make sure everything is completely hydrated. Make sure the sides are scraped down. Now you are going to do this same feeding every day for the next few days until your starter is starting to look active enough to move on to the maintenance phase. Now I'm going to show you in this video, keep watching, when my starter is ready to move on to the maintenance phase. So you're going to do this feeding today, tomorrow, day 6, day 7, until it is ready. Okay, I'm just going to cover this with my lid that isn't airtight and let this sit at room temperature until tomorrow. I will feed the same thing on day 5 and day 6. I will come back and show you what the starter should look like for you to be able to tell that you're ready to move on to the next video, which is our maintenance phase. Hey guys, it's Betty, and it is actually about 8 months since I filmed that first part of this video. I decided to go ahead and refilm the second half of the video because I'm getting a lot of the same questions and I want to clarify a few things so that you are the most successful you can be in getting your sourdough starter going. Now, as we talked about in the first part of the video, starting on day 4, you're going to start with the 1-3-3 feeding. Now, even if you haven't seen a lot of activity in your starter, you're going to move on to this feeding because giving the starter a little more food is going to attract more yeast and bacteria into it. So go ahead and start on that feeding, and you're going to continue that feeding every day until it is ready to bake with. Now, how do we know when it's ready to bake with? Well, the best way to tell if your starter is strong enough to start leavening bread is after you feed it, it doubles in size by about the 4 or 5 hour mark. That's a good indicator that you have a really strong culture and that it's going to be strong enough to leaven bread. So I actually was teaching a sourdough class online this week. So I started a few different starters a few days apart, and I wanted to use this to demonstrate to you kind of what we're looking for. So this starter is on day 4, and I fed all of these about 4 hours ago. So my day 4 starter is not really changed much. You can see by the rubber band on it that I'm not really seeing any growth in it yet. By about the 24-hour mark, when I come back to feed this one tomorrow, I'll probably see some bubbles in it, but it's not very strong yet. Now this one is 2 days older. This one is on day 6, and you can see I do have some growth at that 4-hour mark. There's some nice bubbles in it, but it still hasn't doubled in size. It probably will double in size in the 24-hour mark, but that doesn't mean it's strong enough yet to bake with. This one is on day 8, and you can actually see that this one has almost doubled in size. It maybe is double in size now, so I might say this one's strong enough, but I would probably go ahead and continue feeding it a few more days to just get it a little stronger so that I have a successful first bake. Now this one is on day 10, and you can see that it has definitely doubled in size. It's actually more than doubled in size. Now, I want to stress here, if your starter is not following this as quickly as mine has, do not stress. Do not think that you have to start over or that your starter is dead. Everybody's starter is individual based on your environment and the yeast and bacteria available in your environment and in the flour you're using. So I often get comments from people saying, it's day 5 and I have no bubbles, or day 6 and it's still not doubling. You have to be patient with starters. They can be a little bit finicky at the beginning to get going, but I promise it will get going. Now, a few things to keep in mind to help yours move along a little better. If you aren't using 100% whole wheat flour in your starter, that's really going to help it get going the fastest. Whole grains are going to ferment much faster than white flour. So whole wheat flour works really well. If you can get your hands on rye flour, a lot of people like to use that, but I always instruct using wheat flour because I know it's much easier for people to find. Now, you also want to make sure that your starter is not getting too cold. I keep mine at room temperature, which in my apartment is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. If your starter is being a little bit finicky to get going, you might even want to find a warmer spot than that. Some people like to keep theirs in the oven with the oven light on because that keeps the oven a little bit warmer and that can help the fermentation of your starter. Make sure you put a note on your oven so you don't accidentally turn it on. And that can be a great place to just give it a little more warmth and keep it going. Make sure you're really vigorously stirring it when you stir it because that's going to help capture some yeast and bacteria from the air. And then just be patient. Now, another thing I will note really quickly is it's also really common to see a surge of activity in the first 2 or 3 days and then for it to die down for a few days before it springs back to life. This is super common. Some people call it a false start, and it's actually because there are some undesirable bacteria in your starter that the culture is trying to kind of sort through and stabilize. So if that happens to you, if you get a surge and then it dies down, it doesn't mean that your starter's dead. It's just that the culture is trying to stabilize and keep going with it, and it will get going. Now, if you are at this point, your starter has at least doubled in size in about 4 or 5 hours, you can go ahead and move on to the maintenance video. Now, in that video, I'm going to show you how to maintain your starter once it's active and how to get it ready for bread baking. I'll also let you know how you can store your starter in the refrigerator so that you aren't having to feed it every single day if you're not baking really often with it. Now, if you are still struggling with getting your sourdough starter going, I am going to add a video to this playlist that's all about troubleshooting new starters. So if you're still struggling a little bit, go ahead and look out for that video, and that should help work through most of the common problems. I hope you are enjoying getting your sourdough starter going, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.